All right, darling, let's start the class. We missed out on a few classes and we are still learning how to analyze text. And this is all a matter of practice. So we just want to practice a little bit more before I put you up for your mock.
Okay.
Okay, so now I'm going to share the document with you. This text, this is the one that we were doing the last time.
Yeah.
All right, so step one, when you are reading a text, read it and enjoy it, and just keep at the back of your mind the things that you come across that you may want to mark. Step two, we'll read it again and then we'll mark all the information that we want to take out from this text. And then what we can do is we'll put all the information on a table where we'll see what we got from the text, the reference from the text, and the effect of what we got from the text. I think if we can have this information together, then we will be able to write all our answers very successfully. I've tried this just recently with my school kids, and this has turned out to be a very successful exercise. So let's see if we can do that with this text, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we did start reading this. Let's just read it one more time because it's been a while since we read it together, right?
So should I read it one more time?
Yes, darling, please. Starting from
Um,
here.
Text 1 Adventure Activities in New Zealand, adapted from an article by Victoria
Philpott.
Philpott.
Yeah.
In this passage, the writer describes some adventurous activities she has taken part in. You will feel that the wall against your face and pressing up on your back. Just ease yourself down between the gap and watch out for any creatures that might jump in your face. That's it. Slowly, slowly. That was my guide Nick speaking. I was attempting to do as instructed and built a
Upside
abseiled
down.
Absildam, a tide gap going underground in Waitomo, New Zealand. This involved descending a steep slope by using a rope passed around my body and fixed at a higher point. The harness were pulling tight around my thighs, and my left hand was burning from gripping the rope too hard. With my right hand, I gripped the rope controllers more out of a desperation to hold on to something still and sturdy rather than any actual safety aspect. This was the Blackberry store with the Black Rafting Company, but I hadn't quite perceived exactly what it would involve before I signed up.
I hadn't
We were
quite processed exactly. This was the Black Abyss tour with the Black Rafting Company, but I hadn't quite processed exactly what it would involve before I signed up. Okay?
our guide Nick and we were fitted for shoes, thick wetsuits, socks, helmet, and harnesses. So brighter, younger, and more enthusiastic than I will ever be again. I was ready for action, ready for the 35-meter abseils into the ground and under it. Our guides, Nick and Fresh, were very reassuring and seemed fairly confident I'd be able to do it. Between them, they had loads of experience, and I feel safe in their hands. Good enough odds for me. We did a little practice with the axial ropes on the Grassy
Grassy
Verge
verge.
grassy verge before we went for the real things. When it got to stepping off the platform into a 40 minutes drop, doing
Meter
it
drop.
on the slight
40.
meter drop, doing it into a 40 meter drop, doing it on the slight inclining we we'd been practicing on seemed very different. It seemed to take an age to work my way down. The walls were slippery. It was hard to get any firm grip, and I was terrified of creatures jumping out at me as Nick had warned.
Okay, creatures as Nix had warned.
Mm.
Okay, shall we continue?
Okay. Sure. Am I nearly there yet? I shot it into a abscess as the rope bone was starting to get too much for me. Flawlessly timed as usual. One more release of the rope and I had finished. Of course, the moment it was over, I decided it hadn't taken long enough and just wanted to go back and do it again. After a little rest on the rocks, wait, after a little rest on the rocks, waiting for the rest of my group, we carried on to the flying fox. The flying fox. The flying fox is a zip line. In this case, it was underground and ended in the thickwork against the cave wall. Or that's what it sounded like from the people in front of you. When I actually did it, I realized there was a stopper on the zip line preventing you from bashing into anything, but leaving you spinning in the air if you go at full force, like I did. Still, I screamed and squirted, screwed,
Field.
screed,
Queel.
screed, quilled,
That's right. Squealed.
quilled.
Good.
And squealed to scare those yet to do it. After the trauma of this, we had a little break with some hot chocolate and a snack to get us the energy to complete the next stage. We sat drinking on the edge of a 3-meter drop into water while Nick and Flash packed up the zip line stuff. I was terrified they were going to make us jump out into the water. The leap of faith. They did. We had to hold an inflatable ring under our bottoms and jump into the freezing water. One of the girls in my group cried it. She really didn't want to do it. I toughened up and went for it. It was freezing cold. Flanking the side of caves was a rope, and we could pull ourselves along, admiring the glow worms as we went. We got to a certain point, and Flash made us connected our feet under the arms of the person in front. We glided along the water in a chain. After we'd cruised around for a bit in the flatboat rings, we got up and started to walk around in the underground wilderness. We dived down slides, had to push ourselves through narrow passages, and then navigate the rocky terrain in the dark with just our hands, torch, and to light the ways. The final challenges. We had another break for some hot orange juice and a block of chocolate before the final stretch. The final challenger was to climb out of 2 waterfalls freestyle. The water was wet. Flash was on hand
The
to
water was pummeling down. The water was
the
pummeling down, and you had to this line. You skipped this line.
The water was pouring down, and you had to go around it and up. carefully, placing your feet as you went. Flash was on hand to give some climbing tips, but at this point, 4 hours after we had started, my legs were ridiculously tired.
Ridiculously.
Ridiculously tired. They were weak, and trying to push myself up over the brow of the water foam I feared would finish me off. Like everyone before me, I made it out. It felt weird to be in daylight again. We had a quick photograph on the waterfall outdoors, and finally time to take the wetsuits and shoes off. After much needed hot shower, we met again in the cafe to see our photo with some hot soups and bread, and remiss, um,
Reminisced.
reminisced about our awesome days at Blackwater rafting in New Zealand. Definitely an experience to remember.
Okay, wonderful. So we can see some extremely heavy duty activity in this text. All it talks about is waterfalls, jumping off the
Mm.
mountains, or climbing up a cliff, or going down a steep rock, or even going down, sliding down the mountainside, so on and so forth. So very full of energy, isn't it? It makes
Yeah,
me feel tired by the time the text ends. And if it makes me feel so, then I must say that the writer has been able to write it in a very nice way, because all the tension that the person over here felt, we can somewhat feel it. All the tiredness by the end of the day, we can somewhat feel it too. So now what we want to do is we want to go line by line, paragraph by paragraph, sentence by sentence, and see if we can identify um, any writer's technique or any literary device that the writer may have used in this. So let's do one thing. Let's just start from the very beginning and try to analyze it and jot down the points so
mm,
that we have a good list of things that the writer has used in this text. And then we'll talk about how this list of things is creating an effect in the text. How about that? Do you think that's doable?
mm,
Okay. All right. So let
okay.
me just give me a moment. I'll write here and you can also write in your notes. So we start from the very beginning, adventure activities in New Zealand. The very word, the first word, adventure, over here gives us an idea that we are going to read something which is very rocking and full of energy. Am I right? So we'll just note this down over here. This word, adventure, is something that we can use in order to describe the effect of writing. But we just want to note this down and just keep the list with us. And then later on, we'll discuss how each word or how everything is creating an effect on this text. Okay?
Okay.
Adapted from an article by Victoria Philpott. Now, in English, P and H together will always sound like F. So it's adapted from an article by Victoria Philpott. Since it says that adapted from an article, we know that this is nonfiction. Why? Because this is an article, right?
Yeah.
Immediately the question will come in our mind, what kind of an article is this? What kind of a nonfiction text is this? Excuse me. So it can be, since it's nonfiction, it can be a biography, it can be an autobiography. So we just want to make sure that we understand what kind of a text this is. So we'll
Mm,
discuss this later. We just want to note down a few things first. Okay. In
okay.
this passage, the writer describes some adventurous activities she has taken part in. So this text is going to be described by the writer. Okay. First paragraph. You'll feel the wall against your face and pressing up on your back. Just ease yourself down between the gap and watch out for any creatures that might jump in your face. That's it. Slowly, slowly. This is being said by someone else, and who this is, we'll get to know right now. That was my guide, Nix, speaking. I was attempting to do as instructed and abseiled down a tight gap going underground in Waitomo, New Zealand. So now comes the writer who is talking. Immediately we understand that this is written in the first person. Why do we know that? First person is always I.
Oh.
Okay, always remember you, that means I am always first. You
Mm.
is always second, and he, she, it is always third. Okay,
Okay.
so you can see that was my guide over here, the word my, and here I. All of this help us to understand that this article has been written in the first person. If it is written in the first person, then there is a particular effect that the writer will create on you. So now what is this effect? Say when you are reading anything that is in the first person, it is you who becomes the character. When I say that that was my guide, Nick speaking, I was attempting to do as instructed and abseil down a tight gap going underground. What is this? This means that I am doing it. The moment I read this, I become the character. So now I feel that I have become the writer and I am feeling everything that she is feeling. I feel that I am doing everything that she is doing. So the use of first person, the use
Mm.
of first person narrative is something which always connects the reader to the writer very closely. It
Mm.
gives the reader a personalized reading experience. And we'll write all of these points down. As soon as we're done, identifying the points over here, we'll write the effects down as well. Okay?
Mm. Okay.
Okay, so now from here we move on a little bit. This involved descending a steep slope by using a rope passed around my body and fixed at a higher point. The harness was pulling tight around my thighs, and my left hand was burning from gripping the rope too hard. With my right hand, I gripped the rope controller more out of a desperation to hold on to something still and sturdy rather than any actual safety aspect. So we feel two things here. Number one, the writer is not used to this kind of stuff, this kind of an activity. That is why having this rope around the body or having a harness which is pulling tight around the writer's thighs, the writer is not used to this kind of an attire as well. Then the
Mm.
writer is afraid. Why? My left hand was burning from gripping the rope too hard. The word too hard over here helps us to understand that the writer is afraid. So we'll just note this down over here.
Mm.
And then this is further established, this point that the writer is afraid, this is further established by this
Mm.
description. What is the description? With my right hand, I gripped the rope controller. So the writer is holding on to the rope controller with the right hand, but there is no use, no need to hold on to it. It is not going to help the writer at all. And look, the writer says over here, more out of a desperation to hold on to something still and sturdy rather than any actual safety aspect. So we understand by the use of these words, number one, too hard. The use of these words help us to understand that the writer was afraid. Now, Judy, if you are in a situation where you might be afraid, what are you going to do? If there is anything around you, you'll hold on to it very tight. Say if you are on an aircraft, God forbid, if something like this happens that the aircraft is going down very fast. In that case, what will you do? You will be afraid, right? And you
Yeah.
are afraid, you're going to hold on to the seats, you hold on to your belt or the armrest of the seat very tightly, correct?
Yeah.
So, this holding on too hard, the use of these two words help us to understand that the writer was very afraid. This is further established with the word desperation, to hold on to something still. With the help of these words, especially the word desperation, the writer shows us how helpless the writer was feeling, how afraid the writer was feeling as she was going down, right? So we can just
mm,
note this down over here, the word too hard, then the words desperation, to hold on to something sturdy.
mm,
So we're just making a list of things that we feel are important, and then we'll try to see how these things are creating an effect. Then we'll have all of this written so that we can use these notes of ours when answering question number 3, 6, and 7. Okay?
okay.
All right, so then we move on a little bit more, and what happens? With my right hand, oh, okay, done, done, done. Okay, hang on. I have to scroll down a little bit. There. So starting again from here. This was the Black Abyss tour with the Black Rafting Company, but I hadn't quite processed exactly what it would involve before I signed up. So, one word over here that really helps us to understand the tension, that is black. Black
Mm,
many a times is associated with the frightening, right? It is
mm,
also sometimes associated with mourning. So black, the use of the color over here creates a tension already, right? And then
mm,
again, two more words. The name as a used as a proper noun. The name of the company, Black Abyss. Abyss
mm,
means nothingness. That means there is no end to it, right? So black
mm,
abyss means literally a black hole where you might be stuck, you may never be able to come out of it. So can you just imagine, just by using the name Black Abyss, the writer has been able to give us an idea how dangerous whatever the writer might be doing may be, right? Or how scary or how frightening it may be. And this is further established by but but I hadn't quite processed exactly what it would involve before I signed up. So, over here, saying that the writer actually did not know all that it contained before the writer signed up for this tour shows some sort of regret in the writer's writing over here. When the writer uses the word Black Abyss, combines it with Black Crafting Company, both of the companies together have the most common word in it, black, which stands for fear, right?
mhm,
And then this is further confirmed by the writer when the writer says that I wasn't quite able to process exactly what I would be involved in. So all of this came as a surprise because the writer didn't know what would be happening to her. Now comes what? Now comes the description of what actually happened. So the writer has been able to build up the tension already with the use of the name of the company, with the use of words like desperation, with the quote that the writer started with. The writer started with Nick's, the guide's quote, where the writer said, "You'll feel the wall against your face pressing up on your back." So immediately a feeling of being stuck somewhere, a claustrophobic feeling is created with these two sentences. And
mm,
then just ease yourself down between the gap. Then a somewhat reassuring sentence, ease yourself down between the gap. And then what? A very scary one, watch out for any creatures that might jump in your face. This is super scary. That's it. Slowly, slowly. Over here, the repetition helps us to understand how the guide is trying to calm the people down who are climbing down, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so now we want to move on to this portion. We were fitted for shoes, thick wetsuits, socks, helmets, and harnesses. So, what is the literary device we see here?
Mm.
We see
Uh, which sentence is this? We were fitting for shoes. This one?
yes, this is the one. We were fitted for
Yeah,
shoes.
because the shoes, the socks. So this one is a listing,
That's right. Okay,
and the
so
younger enthusiastic repetition.
rule of three: brighter, younger, more enthusiastic, right? 3 points. So
Yeah.
we have a rule of three.
Mm.
There you go. Okay. So we were fitted for shoes, thick wetsuits, socks, helmets, and harness. The writer has chosen a listing here in order to help us understand how well they were preparing for the activity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all the precautions that they were taking to keep themselves safe. Then moving on. So brighter, younger, and more enthusiastic than I'll ever be again. I was ready for action. So here it shows how much the writer was looking forward to this. Ready for the 35-meter abseil into the ground and under it. So they were going down a mountain and they were going to see what's under there. Our guides, Nix and Flash, were very reassuring and seemed fairly confident I'd be able to do it. Between them, they had loads of experience and I felt safe in their hands. So, over here, how safe the writer felt goes to show with the help of introducing these two guides to us. Good enough odds for me. We did a little practice with the abseil ropes on the grassy verge before we went for the real thing. But when it got to stepping off the platform into a 40-meter drop, doing it on the slight incline we'd been practicing it on seemed very different. We have two figures here, my dear. One is a 35-meter, the other is a 40-meter, right? So we want to write here use of figure and what is used? Slight exaggeration. Oopsie. Sorry, just a moment. Someone is desperately messaging me about a class. My God, do I have a class today? Didi, can you just hold on a minute? I have a class in 20 minutes. I just have to tell them that I'll be 5 minutes late. Okay, slide. So we were talking about the use of figure over here. Are you with me, my dear?
The use of figures is from which examples?
Okay, 35-meter
Mm-hmm.
and 40-meter. Two numbers here,
Okay.
right?
So here they
And so
always
what?
use the use of figures, not statistics.
Oh, not statistics because it's not statistics over here. This is a figure that has been used. Statistics will be when you talk about data. That means that in comparison with something, that's using statistics. So over here, this is just one figure that is being used in order to let you know how deep, how steep this mountain was. Right?
Can I
And
compare as a statistic should be like approximately 40 meters and estimate 30 meters like this?
yes, you can if it's an estimate or an approximate number. Over here, the 35-meter abseil is actually not an approximate number. This is actually the depth that they had to cover. Okay, and The exaggeration over here is something that we need to also mention. A 40-meter drop. So 35-meter abyssal suddenly become a 40-meter drop, right? And why? Because there is a slight exaggeration over here. So these are, okay, so Judy, what are we doing? We're actually putting up everything over here on the left from the text, which we want to explain later on. So we want to talk about uh, the use of figures, and then when we are explaining, we'll say that the writer has used slight exaggeration, where the writer, before they started, she knew it was a 35-meter abyssal, and when they started, the fear in the writer's heart made her feel that this is far more than 35 meters. It's probably for a 40-meter drop. That is why the slight exaggeration has been used. It shows fear. Okay.
Okay.
All right. And then again, two words, alternation of two words. One word is drop, and then this has been altered. Sorry, one word was abyssal.
Mm-hmm.
Abyssal means going down a steep mountain,
Mm-hmm.
and the other word is drop. So abyssal turned into drop, 35-meter turned into 40-meter. And why these two figures that are being changed, 35 to 40, shows fear, and the word abyssal turning into drop shows the fear as well. So by using a different word, the writer has been able to help us to understand how afraid she was feeling at that moment. So she probably felt that she's going to drop. That means she's going to fall down and hurt herself or even die. However, when abyssal was used, it meant that going down the mountain very professionally, she'll be able to do it because she's got all the harness and all the ropes in place. Got it?
Yeah.
Okay, from here, we move on. It seemed to take an age to work my way down. So, relating to time.
Mm.
And this relating to time, using the words and age, the writer again shows us how scary this going down was for the writer. It seemed that it will never end.
Mm.
The walls were slippery, it was hard to get any firm grip, and I was terrified of creatures jumping out at me as Nix had warned. So, over here, all the writer's fears have been listed.
Mm.
So now when we look at these paragraphs and we want to organize our understanding of this text, then the text starts with this paragraph, which is someone's quote, gives us an idea of what the writer was doing. This one gives us an introduction as to how the writer was feeling. This one gives us a background of what happened, why is the writer in this position. This is the preparation to go down the mountain, and this is the feeling as going down. So it's been, you can see the chronological order or the beautiful serial of things that were happening, sequencing one after the other, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, moving on. So now we come to this page. Am I nearly there yet? I shouted into the abyss as the rope burn was starting to get too much for me. Foolishly timed as usual, one more release of the rope and I'd finished. Of course, the moment it was over, I decided it hadn't taken long enough and just wanted to go back and do it again. After a little rest on the rocks, waiting for the rest of my group, we carried to the Flying Fox. So we want to analyze this paragraph. What is here that we feel? Immediately, am I nearly there yet? I shouted. This question over here with the combination of starting to get too much for me. These two things help us to understand, or these two things suggest that the writer was feeling very scared, and she may not be able to take this anymore, right? Because what did she say? As the rope burn was starting to get too much for me, so she may not be able to sustain this drop, this abseil longer. Foolishly timed as usual, one more release of the rope and I'd finished. So this particular sentence means that she was actually almost there, and just one more release of the rope, uh, with that she was able to reach, touch ground. Of course, the moment it was over, I decided it hadn't taken long enough and just wanted to go back and do it again. So over here, we can also feel that the writer was enjoying this. She was very afraid, but the moment she touched ground, she realized, now that she has done this once, that this was not such a big deal. It's easy to do, it is perfectly safe, and she would really like to do it again. So there is a transition from fear to enjoyment. This is what we want to write down over here.
Mm-hmm.
Transition from fear to fun.
Mm-hmm.
So when we use transition from fear to fun, we will be able to show the contrast of feelings over here. How do we show the contrast of feelings? So there's a contrast of feelings over here. This contrast of feelings is first the fear, where she is asking if they are nearly there yet or not. Her rope burn was hurting her. She wasn't being able to take it anymore. And the very next moment, she reached ground and was happy because she wanted to do it all over again. Right? So it's a contrast of feelings, a transition from fear to fun that is very beautifully shown in this paragraph. Now look at this. The whole of this text is actually divided in subheadings. See?
Mm.
So again, something that we can, something to talk about. Subheadings. These subheadings help us to understand the text better, and it shows us each and every phase of the writer's journey, right? So it shows us each and every phase of the writers. Later on, we'll write all of this nicely on a table as well. This is just to remember. Phase of the writer's journey. Okay. So the flying fox, okay, the name over here, the use, you tell me what is it? There's a literary device here.
Yes.
Just the subheading, the flying fox.
The flying fox is a subheading metaphor.
No, it will only be a metaphor if we use it in a sentence. This is a subheading.
Yeah.
The
So,
the letter F is being repeated.
oh,
Alliteration, my dear. Right?
yeah.
Okay. The letter F is being repeated. That is why we'll call it alliteration over here. And the word flying fox, these words actually paint a picture in our mind. What do you see when you close your eyes and I tell you the flying fox? What will you see?
Close my eyes and see the flying fox.
Yeah, you'll actually see a fox flying, right? So in this case, the writer has used alliteration. The writer has also used imagery in order to create a picture in our mind, right? So the writer has used a imagery to create a picture in our mind. And why has this picture is being created? To intrigue the reader. That means to make us think that, oh wow, what is this? If I'm intrigued, I am engaged. That means I do not want to put the article down. I want to read on and understand what is happening and why is it happening. Okay. All right.
Okay.
The flying fox is a zip line. In this case, it was underground and ended in a thwack against the cave wall. So the flying fox is a zip line. In this case, it was underground and ended in a thwack against the cave wall. This word thwack over here is, can you tell me what it is?
Where is that? Where?
Thwack.
The onomatopoeia.
Absolutely right. Onomatopoeia. Okay. Um, or that's what it sounded like from the people in front of you. So it says, it paints a very funny picture in your mind, because you will feel that people moving from one sliding, on this line from one side of the hill going to the other and banging into the wall. This is what the writer has described it like. However, it's never like that, because the writer has written over here, when I actually did it, I realized there was a stopper on the zip line preventing you from bashing into anything, but leaving you spinning in the air if you go at it full force like I did. So when she went very fast, she realized that she's not going to bump into the wall of the hill. She would just, there's a stopper over there, so the line is you can, it automatically stops the person who's gliding down like that. And then since she was going very fast, she ended up spinning into that corner. What did she do? Take a look at this. This is interesting. Still, I screamed and squealed to scare those yet to do it. So now what's happened over here? The writer is shouting and screaming and squealing. Why? In order to scare the others who will go after her. So if they hear her screaming and squealing like that, she's sure that they will be afraid to come down the zip line, right? She's just having some fun here. So over here, she has used humor. Number one, she has used onomatopoeia in order with the word, using the word thwack, and explained to us, she draws this picture in her mind that everyone who goes down the zip line from here to there is going to end up smashing themselves on the hill wall. Actually, it's not like that. It stops right at the end, so you don't get hurt or anything. However, so this is a funny picture that she already drew in our minds when she said the word thwack. And then later on, she also added words like screamed and squealed in order to scare the people who will follow her or who will be after her, because they're all together in a group. So this is for her group members. She's just having some fun with them. So she's added some humor here. After the trauma of this, we had a little break with some hot chocolate and a snack to give us the energy to complete the next stage. Again, the word trauma still shows the fear in her heart about everything. That is why when the word thwack has been used, it shows that she is ready to believe the worst things about this, about the worst things of the outcome for this trip, right? That's why the word trauma has also been used. We sat drinking on the edge of a 3-meter drop into water while Nix and Flash packed up the zip line stuff. I was terrified they were going to make us jump off into the water. So, again, the word terrified shows that she is not sure as to what is going to happen, right? So, there is always this sense of tension, because she doesn't know what's going to happen. It's something or the other that they ask you to do is obviously going to be something that she has never done before. So she is always afraid. That is why the use of trauma, the use of word terrified. And we are being able to identify all the important points from the text so that we can learn to use them together in, say, for our answers for 3, 6, and 7. Moving on a little bit more. The leap of faith. Again, a subheading. What does it say? It starts with only 2 words, a very short sentence. Very short, simple sentence. What is this very short, simple sentence? They did, right? And just by using this, she shows how afraid she probably was, because just a minute before, just a line before, she said that I was terrified they were going to make us jump off into the water. And the very next line she writes, they did. Okay. We had to hold an inflatable ring under our bottoms and jump into the freezing water. One of the girls in my group cried. She really didn't want to do it. I toughened up and went for it. It was freezing cold. So, freezing used twice in order to emphasize how cold it was. The word toughened, in contrast with cried, shows the writer's determination to see this through. Okay, we move on a little bit more and then let's see what happens. Flanking the side of the caves was a rope, and we could pull ourselves along, admiring the glowworms as we went. So again, all of this time, these 2 paragraphs is talking about things that she doesn't want to do. She's afraid, she's scared. And then again, a beautiful description of what she saw when she was in there. So if you just move back a little bit to the top of the page, when she lands, she was happy and she wanted to go back again. So you can see there's a huge seesaw of emotions in the whole of the text. We see sometimes she's happy, and we see sometimes she's afraid, right?
Yeah.
So over here now, again, we are going to see how beautiful this was and how she was enjoying it. Flanking the side of the cave was a rope, and we could pull ourselves along. So when they fell into the water, they went to the sides of the caves, and there were ropes hanging there. So they pulled themselves up on those ropes. And as they were doing it, they saw glow worms. Why is the word admiring used here? Because it talks about beauty. It talks about how beautiful they looked. So word admiring over here to help us to understand that they saw something beautiful and they were enjoying this. We got to a certain point and Flash made us connect our feet under the arms of the person in front. We glided along the water in a chain. So they formed a human chain and they went into the water. After we'd cruised around for a bit in the inflatable rings, we got up and started to walk around in the underground wilderness. Now, over here, cruised is the word that also helps to understand that she was enjoying. When do you go on a cruise? You go on a cruise when wherever you are going, it's all very beautiful, right? The word cruise means that it's going to be a beautiful ride. So that is why the word cruise and admiring, both of them over here, help us to understand that she was enjoying, right? Then a little bit more, in the underground wilderness. Now, this is a beautiful word that helps us to understand that what she saw was very pretty. You will see wilderness on the land, in forests, near jungles or the woods. That's called wilderness. You will be able to see it underground. This is something quite unique, right? So now what happens? We dived down slides, had to push ourselves through narrow passages, navigate the rocky terrain in the dark with just our head torches to light the way. Again, a very quick listing of what they had to do to show all the ordeal that she was going through. So again, over here, a listing or sequencing, in not listing, let's put up sequencing of activities to help us understand the ordeal that she was going through.
Mm.
All right,
Okay.
moving on just a little bit more left. Let's just finish this quickly. The final challenge. So, end of our ordeal. Let's see what happens here. We had another break for some hot orange juice and a block of chocolate before the final stretch. The final challenge was to climb out of two waterfalls freestyle. The water was pummeling down, and you had to go around it and up, carefully placing your feet as you went. So, the word final, the word pummeling, all of them together.
Mm.
And then what else is there? Flash was on hand to give some climbing tips, but at this point, 4 hours after we'd started, my legs were ridiculously tired. So, time again, 4 hours. Mention of time. Mention of adjective, ridiculously.
Mm.
I've lost it. There. They were weak and trying to push myself up over the brow of the waterfall I feared would finish me off. So, again, a description weak and then fear. What was the fear? That this will be the end of the writer right here. And all of these words over here help us to understand or suggest that this is towards the end, either for the good or the bad, but now comes everything comes to an end. Like everyone before me, I made it out. It felt weird to be in daylight again. We had a quick photograph under the waterfall outdoors, and it was finally time to take the wetsuit and shoes off. After a much needed hot shower, we met again in the cafe to see our photos with some hot soup and bread and reminisced about our awesome day at Blackwater rafting in New Zealand. Definitely an experience to remember. So, last paragraph ends on a very positive note, talking about everything good. A feel of friendship or shared experience over here.
Mm.
Everyone took photographs, they shared those. So you see, there's a feel of friendship over here when everyone is getting together in the cafe and um, getting together in the cafe. And then, sorry, I'm very sorry, Judy, I got lost. Okay, so the paragraph ends on a positive note and it shows a lot of friendship and shared experiences. And
Mm.
over here, the word awesome,
Mm.
awesome. This helps us to understand how much she enjoyed everything that she has described in this text. Okay,
Mm.
so there we go. The whole of your text, we have been able to put it up here in red and blue. Now, what we want to do in the next class is we're going to put everything together and we'll talk about how all of this, what kind of an effect all of this creates on the text or on the reader who is reading it. Okay, so say for example, why the writer has used listing, why the writer has used the rule of three, or what kind of an effect the word trauma has created on the reader. What does the word terrified means over here? So in this way, now that we have everything written here, we just need to discuss the effects of these writing, which is going to give us a very good material to write question 3, 6, and 7. Okay, any questions, my dear? Excuse me.
So all of this is from is about literary devices.
That's
Then I should go through that. Then I can like identify which one is from the literacy devices and make and write explain and maybe connect with the writers and the audience, like create attentions or what's the writer's feelings. And
absolutely right. Absolutely right. This is what we're doing. We are analyzing the text, trying to understand everything that the writer has written over here. Because in our exams, everything that we identify, we have to talk about its effect. And this is what we're going to do in the next class. We will talk about the effects of everything that we have identified here today. Okay?
okay, thank you very much.
Okay, darling. I should see you in the next class then.
See you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Take care.